When the storm hit and all the electricity went out in the hospital that night, nobody knew who 34-year-old nurse Sarah really was. When the biggest storm hit St. Joseph Hospital, Staff Sergeant Sarah Taylor was working the night shift as an ICU nurse. Sarah, who had been working at the same hospital for 9 years, was just a quiet, reliable nurse to everyone. Sarah's daily routine was always the same. She'd arrive at 7 p.m., check her patients, administer medications, and return home at 7 a.m. She never talked much with anyone, just focused on her work. The hospital staff called her Silent Sarah. She was so professional that she never complained, never created drama. But nobody knew her real story. In Sarah's locker in the changing room, there was an old photo. A young female soldier in the deserts of Afghanistan with her comrades. The back of the photo read, 68W Combat Medic, Alpha Company, 2012. Sarah looked at this photo every day but never showed it to anyone. You haven't seen yet how Sarah would change that night. As the storm ravaged Chicago that night, 847 patients were lying in St. Joseph's. 23 critical patients in the ICU were connected to life support machines. As Sarah was doing her final patient checks, she could feel how the wind was shaking the hospital building. "This is going to be a bad night," she murmured to herself. As Sarah checked her patients, memories of that terrible night in Afghanistan came back to her mind. 12 years had passed, but that trauma was still in her mind. Every storm, every power outage, she remembered what she experienced that night. Security guard Mike Johnson, who worked in the hospital corridors, always wondered about Sarah. Why doesn't this woman ever panic? Why is she never afraid, he would think. Mike had noticed there was deep experience in Sarah's eyes, but he had never been able to learn why. As Sarah was doing her final patient checks, lightning struck the hospital. All the lights went out. The hospital was plunged into darkness. "The generator will kick in," Sarah murmured. 3, 2, 1, ... quote. Nothing happened. Sarah's heart began beating rapidly. This was a repeat of that night in Afghanistan. But the real shocking part hadn't started yet. Nurse Jenny Miller, running around in panic in the emergency department, shouted, "Sarah! Sarah, where are you? The generators aren't working. The ICU patients are dying." Sarah was instantly transported back 12 years ago, to that night in Afghanistan. Forward Operating Base Wilson near Kandahar. Combat Medic Staff Sergeant Sarah Taylor was on night duty. She was 22 years old and hadn't yet fully understood how ruthless war could be. "Taylor!" Commander Rodriguez had shouted. "IED attack! Multiple casualties in the red zone." Sarah had run to the field hospital. 12 severely wounded soldiers were lying there. Jackson, Rodriguez, Thompson, they were all friends. They all dreamed of going home. Enemy mortar had hit the base generator. Life support machines had stopped. "Taylor," Dr. Hayes had shouted, "the electrical system collapsed. Generator's not working." "Roger that, sir. Backup systems, all damaged. Then these soldiers will die." Sarah didn't accept the word die that night. Sarah found herself back at St. Joseph's. The same panic, the same sense of responsibility. "Sarah," Jenny shouted again, "the ICU patients are dying." This is exactly when Sarah's true identity would be revealed. "Jenny," Sarah said in a calm voice, "gather all nursing staff. We're initiating emergency protocol." "Sarah, you're just an ICU nurse." "No, Jenny," Sarah's voice hardened. "Tonight I'm the commander of this unit." Jenny looked at Sarah in amazement. She had never heard this voice before. Sarah's posture had changed. Her shoulders had straightened. There was determination in her eyes. "Jenny," Sarah continued, "call Dr. Wilson, call Dr. Chen, find Security Chief Mike. I want them all in the ICU within 5 minutes." "Sarah, 5 minutes!" Sarah's voice echoed in the hospital corridors. This was a commander's voice. Sarah ran to the ICU. When she opened the door, she faced a disaster scene. 23 critical patients in a dark room with monitors running only on battery power. Under normal circumstances, generator repair would take 6 to 8 hours, but the ICU patients only had 47 minutes of battery power. Sarah's Afghanistan memories came alive. "These soldiers will not die," young Sarah had shouted. She had looked around the base, bombed equipment, damaged generators, no working electrical systems. Then an idea came to her mind. Manual resuscitation. "Hey, Rodriguez," she had shouted to her friend. "Bring all the ambu bags, one for each patient." "Sarah, what are you doing?" "We're going to do manual ventilation for 12 hours until the electricity comes back." It had lasted 12 hours. Sarah's arms had ached, but she had saved the lives of 12 friends. She remembered that night. 12 wounded soldiers, damaged generators, no electricity, and the miracle Sarah created in 12 hours. "What you've seen so far is nothing." "Dr. Wilson," Sarah called out clearly, "we need to assess all your critical patients." "Right now." "Sarah, what's the status of the generators?" Dr. Wilson asked in a panicked voice. "The generators aren't working." "But we are." Sarah's old military training kicked in. She visualized the hospital emergency protocols in her mind. She had been working in this department for 9 years. She knew every patient, every device, every procedure. Battery power, manual ventilation, CPR rotation, medication dosages. She calculated everything. "Jenny," she called, "collect all the ambu bags, one for each patient." "Sarah, what are the ambu bags for? We're going to do manual ventilation." Dr. Wilson came up to Sarah. "Sarah, what are you doing? This is very risky." Sarah turned to Dr. Wilson. The determination he saw in her eyes surprised him. "Doctor, how long have you been working at this hospital?" 15 years. Why?" "I've been here for 9 years. I know these patients better than you do. And tonight, nobody will die." "You won't believe this, but..." Sarah began assessing the 23 patients in the ICU. She analyzed each one's condition. 5 patients on ventilators, 8 patients on cardiac monitors, 6 patients on dialysis machines, 4 patients on IV pumps. As Sarah examined these patients, she remembered that night in Afghanistan, creating miracles with limited resources. This was her specialty. "Jenny," she called, "we're dividing all the nurses into groups of 2. "Sarah, what are you doing?" "Saving lives." Sarah remembered her old military training. Combat Medic Staff Sergeant Taylor, 89 successful missions. She had never lost a patient. "Manual system," she murmured, "medical care without technology." St. Joseph's head nurse Linda Thompson had known Sarah for 9 years. Quiet, modest ICU nurse. She never spoke loudly, never gave orders, never showed leadership. But the Sarah she saw tonight was different. "Linda," Sarah spoke in an authoritative voice, "we're dividing 12 nurses into 6 groups. Each group will be responsible for 4 patients." "Sarah, how is this possible?" "Let's go!" Sarah's voice echoed in the ICU. Linda looked at Sarah in amazement. This voice was a commander's voice. "Sarah, who are you?" Linda asked. Sarah answered without hesitation. "Tonight I'm the medical commander of this unit." Linda started running without questioning. The authority in Sarah's voice revealed her military background. 15 minutes later, 12 nurses were stationed in the ICU. Each was doing the tasks Sarah had assigned them. Sarah went to each patient and initiated the manual care protocol. Manual ventilation with ambu bags for ventilator patients. Manual pulse monitoring for cardiac patients. Manual fluid management for dialysis patients. Gravity drip systems for IV patients. Dr. Wilson came up to her. "Sarah, how is this possible? These patients can't survive this way." 47 minutes, Sarah said calmly. "I did it for 12 hours in Afghanistan. This is easier." "Afghanistan?" Dr. Wilson was surprised. "Are you a combat medic?" Sarah stopped. After 9 years, her secret was coming out. Staff Sergeant Sarah Taylor, 68W Combat Medic, 3rd Infantry Division, 3 deployments, 89 missions. I never lost a patient. Dr. Wilson held his breath. "You're not just a nurse." "No," said Sarah, checking her patient's pulse. "I'm a warrior?" "But you still didn't know what Sarah experienced that night in Afghanistan." 2012, near Kandahar. The forward surgical team under Combat Medic Staff Sergeant Sarah Taylor's responsibility was under enemy attack. The attack had started at 1:17. Sarah was taking care of wounded soldiers. The first mortar had hit the main generator. The second mortar hit the backup systems. The third mortar hit the vehicle fleet. In the field hospital, there were 12 severely wounded soldiers. Jackson Williams, 19 years old, from Ohio. His family was waiting for him. Rodriguez Thompson, 21 years old, from Texas. He was writing letters to his girlfriend, Maria Santos, Sarah's close friend, 20 years old, from California. "Taylor," Commander Rodriguez had shouted, "what's the status of power systems?" "All systems down, sir. No backup power available." "Then these soldiers will die." Sarah looked at her friends. Jackson's breathing difficulty, Rodriguez's bleeding wound, Maria's broken ribs. They were all connected to life support machines. "No, sir. These soldiers will not die." "Taylor, how will you do it?" Sarah looked around the field hospital. There was no working electrical equipment, but she had her hands, she had her knowledge, she had her training. "Manual medical support, sir. 12 hours straight if necessary." "Is this possible?" "I don't know, sir. But I have to try." That night, Sarah had achieved the impossible. At St. Joseph's, Sarah was doing the same thing. She was manually monitoring 23 patients. Manual ventilation, pulse control, IV monitoring, vital signs tracking. Everything like in Afghanistan, but this time with more advanced knowledge. "Jenny," Sarah shouted, "what's the electricity ETA?" 23 minutes of battery power left, Sarah." Sarah's hands worked professionally. That night in Afghanistan, the same panic, the same time pressure, the same sense of responsibility. As she checked each patient, she thought of her friends. Jackson, now 31 years old, a family doctor in Ohio. Rodriguez, a retired veteran in Texas. Maria. Maria had been saved that night, but died 6 months later in another operation. "Maria," Sarah whispered, "I'm doing this for you tonight, too. Could you have taken care of 23 lives in 23 minutes? Hospital staff had gathered around Sarah. Everyone was watching her miraculous work. The quiet nurse they had known for 9 years had revealed her warrior identity. "Will this work?" Dr. Wilson asked. As Sarah checked a patient's pulse, she said, "It worked in Afghanistan. How many people did you save that night?" 12, but here there are 23. Every nurse was following Sarah's directives: manual ventilation, vital monitoring, medication timing. Without technology, just with medical knowledge. Vital signs were stable. Patients were staying alive. "Keep going," Sarah shouted, "working as a team. You'll see what happened in the hospital at that moment." After 22 minutes, sounds started coming from the hospital corridors. "The generator started working," shouted the electrical technician. Starting from the 3rd floor of the hospital, lights began to turn on. One by one, each floor was lighting up. 1st floor, 2nd floor, 3rd floor. ICU. In the ICU, life support machines started working again. Monitors turned on. Ventilators started. "We did it," Jenny shouted. "All critical patients are safe." Sarah stood by her patients. After 9 years, she had saved lives again. Everyone around her was applauding, but Sarah wasn't smiling. There were tears in her eyes. Dr. Wilson came up to Sarah. "Sarah, how many lives have you saved in your lifetime?" Sarah looked at her patients. "I haven't counted. I can't count since Maria." "Who is Maria?" "Best friend, in Afghanistan. I saved her that night. She died 6 months later. Since that day, every patient I save is for her." Dr. Wilson touched Sarah's shoulder. "You're a real hero." "No," said Sarah. "I'm just a medic doing my duty." The next morning, St. Joseph Hospital Director Dr. Rebecca Chen called Sarah to her office. Not only Dr. Chen was in her office. Jenny, Dr. Wilson, Linda, and hospital board members were there. "Sarah," said Dr. Chen, "your performance last night was incredible, but we want to learn your real identity." Sarah quietly placed her old military file on the table. Yellowed papers, old photos, medals. Staff Sergeant Sarah Taylor, 68W Combat Medic, 3rd Infantry Division, Afghanistan, 2009 to 2015. 3 deployments, 89 successful missions. I never lost a patient. Combat Medical Badge, Bronze Star, Purple Heart. Dr. Chen read the medals. "Why did you come here?" Sarah looked out the window at the children's park in the hospital garden. "In war, I saved soldiers. Here I save civilians. Same mission." Nobody knew for 9 years? It wasn't necessary. I don't do it for ego, I do it for patience. Jenny stepped forward. Sarah, you're my hero. No, Jenny, you're my hero. You've been taking care of patients here for 15 years. That's real heroism. That day, Sarah's real story spread throughout St. Joseph Hospital. They had recognized the hero who had been living among them for 9 years. Hospital management offered Sarah a new position. They wanted her to become critical care director. No, said Sarah, I'm a bedside nurse. I'll stay that way. Why? Because real healing happens at the bedside. A month later, when another storm hit, nobody at St. Joseph's panicked because they knew Sarah was there. Sarah Taylor's story isn't just the story of an electrical crisis. It shows that real heroes live quietly, serving not for titles and recognition, but to fulfill their duty to humanity. When you ask, do real heroes wear uniforms? Sarah answers like this: heroism isn't done with uniforms, it's done with compassion. When the electricity goes out again at St. Joseph's, everyone asks, where's Sarah? Because now they know that Sarah isn't just a nurse, she's a living legend. And Sarah still says with the same humility, I'm just doing my job. But now everyone knows that Sarah's job is saving lives. Have you ever thought about how extraordinary the ordinary people around you might really be? Write your city in the comments and share if this story moved you. Because the next real hero might be that quiet person working next to you. At Hidden Legends, real heroes live in places you'd never expect. Stay tuned, because the next story will be even more surprising. And remember, real heroes change uniforms, but their missions never change.